All right, so when we talk about nucleic acids, I kind of like these as my Hufflepuffs just because they're very dependable because everybody has these and they're used them all the time. Um, and again, these are going to be our nucleic acids. So talking about nucleic acids, well, a nucleic is the polymer, nucleic acid is the polymer, and it's made up of small pieces called nucleotides. These are the monomers. So what makes up a nucleotide? Well, this is going to be some type of sugar, some type of base, and a phosphate. So sugar, phosphate, base. That may sound familiar from high school. Sugar, phosphate bases, that's what a nucleotide is made up of, and we know that that's part of DNA and RNA. We'll talk a little bit more about DNA and RNA. They have their own chapters in the book. But just know that those are nucleic acids. So DNA and RNA are great examples of nucleic acid. Deoxyribo, nucleic acid. This is ribose, nucleic acid. But another two good ones that are kind of overlooked but do really cool things for us are ATP and ADP. And they're made up of, they are types of nucleotides, all right? So they're just one sugar, one phosphate in the base. Here's an example of one. Here's the sugar, or ribose sugar. Here's the phosphates. This is ATP, T meaning tri, as in 3, 1, 2, 3. So this is ATP. And here's some type of a base. So this would be the A's, T's, G's, and C's that are found in DNA. This is adenosine, so this is an A. So adenosine triphosphate. So what's so important about it? Well, you see these three phosphate groups? This lasts between the second and third phosphate group. In order for them to hook together, they need a lot of energy. So we can, there's a certain organelle in your body that takes the energy from your food that you eat, breaks it down, and takes that energy and puts it here. And by attaching a third phosphate on. So it charges an ATP molecule with a little bit of energy. Think about this. We know that when you turn on power in a room, there's wires that run through the wall that go from the light switch to the lights. And that's how power is transferred from one place to another in the wall. Well, we know we have power in our body, but how do we transport the power around our body? Well, we don't have wires. We do have a nervous system, but that's not for transporting power. That's for transporting nervous impulses so we respond and react to our environment. But how do we actually go through and move energy around our body? Well, we don't need wires. Each of you has a device on you that runs off of energy, but it's not plugged into the wall. It's your cell phones. And what do you have to do to your cell phone to make sure it stays running? You have to charge the battery. Batteries are a way to move energy around without having to have a direct link and connect from one end to the other, right? Put energy in the battery and then move the battery around. And this is how our body works. There's a whole factory inside each one of your cells, much like there's multiple factories inside each one of your cells that takes the energy from food and stores it in batteries and then sends the batteries out into the cell. And that's the mighty mitochondria. It produces, it's the powerhouse of the cell, right? Well, what's the power? Batteries. We run on battery power, guys. We are battery-powered organisms, right? So what's a charged battery? That's ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That third phosphate is holding energy in the bond. So what happens? Well, this floats up to some place where where work needs to be done, and it attaches to whatever substrate's there. And when it does, it releases that phosphate. And when it breaks that bond, the energy is released. And that moves, this free energy will move on into the system and generate some type of activity and motion. For helping produce, making sure that your muscles can move and that you can digest and that your heart beats, right? So that's where we get our power from. But now that we've separated this third phosphate, we no longer have ATP, we now have ADP, adenosine diphosphate, just meaning two phosphates. Okay, but that's okay. The mitochondria is right around the corner. It's going to take this phosphate and this ADP, pull it back in, take the energy from your food, and use it to bind that third phosphate right back on. And that's going to be our ATP. So ATP is a great example of a nucleic acid. And how ATP and ADP are used in the body. One's the charged battery and one is the flat battery, or the dead battery, and it can be recharged. And it just goes through this cycle called the ATP cycle, which is really neat. But those are nucleic acids, and it helps us do a bunch of stuff inside of our bodies. So the last two things are the DNA and the RNA. These are also nucleic acids, right? Deoxyribonucleic acid, ribonucleic acid. So what are the big differences between the two? Well, DNA, it's two sides, it's two twisted chains in a double helix, right? It's two and they're twisted up. Here's one side and here's the opposite side. And they're bound together, kind of like we say kind of like a twisted ladder is a good example of it, of what the shape would look like. But this is DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. RNA, instead of being two twisted chains, it's just one chain, but it's not twisted at all. Whereas DNA carries genetic information for making proteins, RNA actually carries out the protein synthesis. So it actually makes the proteins that DNA is telling it to make. So it's just a single strand, but you can see here's a phosphate, here's a sugar, here's a base, here's another phosphate, here's a sugar and a base. So this is one nucleotide, right? A sugar, phosphate, and a base. How many nucleotides do you see on this strand? Well, let's count them. 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's 4 nucleotides in this one nucleic acid. So these are the monomers. This whole thing together is the polymer. So I believe that wraps everything up for us for macromolecules. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, be sure to email me or come by my office and see me, or give me a phone call and leave a message if you need to. I wish you guys the best of luck, and I hope to see you again next time.